This is the director, right? You always want to be somebody. Okay.
I'm not going to comment.
Last week, we were talking about John 14. Sheldon was the facilitator, of course. And I want to know if there are any questions pertaining to that, because he's, of course, available to field any questions that may come as a result of what he dealt with last week. So, if there are questions from the broadcast, type them into the box. And if there are questions from the telephone, just raise the question, okay?
Did you hear all of it?
Uh-huh.
Because we were talking about, free will. And when the church says you need to do this and this and this and this and this, are they infringing on your free will?
Yes. They infringe upon your free will not because they ask you to do it, but because if they are implying that there will be repercussions if you don't. Whether that be you going to hell.
This is coercion.
Right, it's coercion. Or whether it be you're not going to be accepted by the group, or you can't be the president of the organization if you don't do that kind of thing. That's coercion. So it is an infringement. Now, if I sit here and say to you, I would appreciate it if we could do whatever, and you don't do it, it's okay. And the funny thing about that is, even before I understood the principle of free will, I have never done to people like that I cover. Even when they do the revival, they say everybody got to pay $25, and if you don't pay it, then they talk about you.
Mm-hmm.
I never did that because I always felt that people would do what they could, and if they couldn't get that between them and God, I had to do with that.
Oh, let me ask you something, because Mark and I know this church, and in order for people to do things in the church, as far as Good Aim had to be rebuilt, and in order to get a contract, you had to what, Mark?
You had to give 10% of the money back to the church. To get
the
contract.
Sometimes you get to get the bid.
Now that's illegal.
I know. I was telling them it's illegal.
Yeah.
That's illegal. You're not supposed to do that, people.
What you're doing is give a kickback.
That's exactly.
Now, if they choose to give 10%, that's fine.
They couldn't get it. They couldn't get some contract. Some contractors couldn't get it until they did.
Okay.
Until they,
and that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that's illegal.
That is totally wrong.
So that's violating free will as well.
Well, actually, is worse than you can violate free will unconsciously. This was a conscious effort to get money. The one thing that we have inherited as a result of feeling that we're separated from each other is greed. And it comes in all kinds of forms. If we can overcome the whole idea of greed, everything in the world will change overnight. Everything will change overnight. But it's the whole concept of separateness that results in greed. Because if you feel like you're alone, you feel like you got to take care of yourself because nobody else is. Right? And if you feel like you got to take care of yourself because nobody else is, now you feel like you have to accumulate more than you need just in case you fall on hard times. And then you keep doing that, accumulating till you get to the point where that becomes your life, your lifestyle. And no matter how much you have, you always want more. And if you're doing people wrong to get it, the term usually is, it's nothing personal, it's just business. That's not, and that's said so that you can disassociate it from you. That's not who I am, that's what I do. Well, what you do is based on who you are. Especially when it comes to your relationship with other people. Is that what you said?
Yes.
So that, because for example, if you're working for me and we're doing fine, and then I decide that I want to increase my profit level, now I began to lay people off, but I want the same amount of production. Yeah, you see? But if I care about you and I'm trying to do this because I want you to be taken care of, even if we do go through a trend, well, we have enough cash on hand and we have enough production being done for me to cut back on what I take out of the business so you can keep a job. And there are companies who did that during the recession. You see? That's the difference. That's the difference. So I think we're at a place now where we are beginning to see from a different perspective what we need to do in order to move mankind to a place of understanding that we truly are one. And you might say, well, it doesn't look like that. Well, nothing looks like it until it happens. But I think we'll look at it retrospectively and say, you know what? I saw, that's when it began, that kind of thing. Okay, any other questions?
I had one small comment on what Ms. Audrey said as far as infringement upon free will. To a certain extent, that actually also impedes the person from having any type of personal growth. Because it's the same thing as if I have a personal experience with, let's say, dating or whatever, and because of my bad experience, I automatically tell you, you don't want to get involved with that or something like that. And then all of a sudden, these different things that you're going to go through that may be perceived as being horrible or bad at the moment, or keeping you from having certain experiences to get to know yourself better as a person. So there's a lot of things that people need to experience and go through without someone just saying, don't do this, don't do that, don't do everything. They need an understanding of why they're not doing it.
Okay. That's it. You good? Any other question?
It's funny, we're talking about this idea of selfishness and greed. One of the things I wrote on 9/20/12, and it, so it just was prepared to receive. And I said that we do this when we create space to receive. That's how you prepare to receive. You create the space. And so how do you create the space? You give, and it shall be given unto you. And I compare it to the man who made more physical space to store what he had. And that night his soul, the man who built the bigger barn to keep for himself. Yeah. And that night his soul was required of him. We have to create a spiritual rather than a physical space in order to rightly receive. It's a matter of being selfish or unselfish. The man who built the barn wanted to receive in order to keep. He wanted to continue to add to his stores, whereas the man who gives spiritually receives for the sake of sharing with others. So he continuously prepares space to receive, and so he continually receives.
And the manifestation of that, I think, Barbara, would have been if he had been building, if he did not build bigger barns, but when his barns got full, he gave it away. You see? Mm-hmm. And because when it gets beyond what you need, and when you think about it, when we were living, when we were growing stuff, we were in the garden and stuff, that's what we did. My grandma would can and stuff, and then the rest of it, she would get to come back, neighbor would come get it, that kind of thing. That's the principle. Now, there's another principle that I'm going to tie this principle to what we were talking about when we understood that there's no such thing as racism, it's just perceived, that these are spiritual thoughts that we've created. The whole sense of that is this: when we're talking about allowing people to come and get from the garden, when you look at that, That's the village concept. That was brought from Africa, the whole idea of that. But when you move to the God that we created and see that the God that we created is the one who built bigger barns. You see what I'm talking about? The God that we created never gets enough. So there are some of them who do because they have picked it up from those who brought the concept into this realm. And that if you look at the whole concept that we were talking about where there is no racism, you look at the African, or you look at the dark skin, which represents confusion of thought, right? Mm-hmm. That representation of them is seen through the idea of community gardens, community concept. Everyone participates in the rearing of a child, and we are indeed our neighbor's keeper, and we must take care of each other. There is the idea of a microcosm of a family structure does not exist because everyone is family, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But the further you get away from that, the more this small family, mom and dad, sister, brother, first cousin, nothing beyond that, which perpetuates separation. You see? Yeah. So in order to move beyond that, someone has to begin to reintroduce the concept of not building bigger barns, but giving the access away. And I think that may very well be the reason some things happen in the midst of this congregation as well as the other one that I cover, so that we can bring that to fruition by giving. Mm. You remember when the truck burned, Valeriano's truck burned? Yeah. I believe that happened for two reasons. One, so we could introduce the concept of giving, and two, so he could be introduced to the concept of receiving, because he's a huge giver, but he didn't want to receive. So, and the reason I know that had to be true is because I had an amount in my mind from each covering, and I never said it, and both of them matched it exactly the same to the penny. So, and then, and as things have progressed, and other people in the midst need than what we do. Mm-hmm. So that concept is being reintroduced. Wow. And I think that the one of the reasons it is so easily introduced by these congregations is because if you go down the line, most of us grew up in communities or households that shared. Mm-hmm. Not just within the house, but with neighbors. Mm-hmm. They went beyond your relatives. Because I grew up understanding that you haven't done anything if you help your relatives. You have to go beyond that, because that's expected. Yeah. So that in itself helps us to see the reintroduction of it. Now, having said that, I want to bring this in, and I'm nowhere near what I really want to talk about today. I want to bring this concept in with what's going on around us in this world that we call political, which is really not spiritual manifestation. If you look at it, Romney built bigger barns, and Obama represents man not building bigger barns, but making an attempt to sell everything according to man's wisdom and man's knowledge, which means that both are dealing with mankind from an earthly perspective. Can you see that? Yes. It is no accident that, no coincidence that Romney became the nominee. They pushed that, and they did not know that they were fulfilling the will of the Creator. Because he represents the essence of greed, without regard for anyone other than himself and those around him. Can you see that? Yes. And Obama mama is representative of the one who came through hard times and recognizes that other people need to be helped. If people are going to make it, they need help. They need a safety net. Now, this is the thing. Both of them wrong. Because both of them are looking at it from a human perspective. So it is our responsibility to continuously infuse a spiritual perspective into the macro so that we can make sure that things stay on course. And when I say things stay on course, I don't mean things stay on course in order for somebody to get elected. I mean stay on course so that we are the conduits through which the Creator speaks to mankind as a whole. Denise?
There used to be a concept in this country of responsibility to one another, and that seems to have been completely lost. They don't talk about it in politics anymore. I mean, it used to be kind of a moral concern, you know, that the more you had, the more responsibility you had to others.
That was the Kennedy concept.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Only thing, that concept was just demonized, and people read and fed into it. So once upon a time, that was a good thing to do, and now all of a sudden, that's not such a great thing to actually do.
And if you look at it, it began to move more and more in the direction that Sheldon just mentioned, when corporations began to influence what was being taught in colleges and universities. You go to school to get a job, you don't go to learn. You see the difference?
Mm.
That's why people are taken aback today when they find out that I was in school 10 years and didn't care about a degree. It's like, what? The objective is to get a degree. No, the objective was to learn. That's why I went. And so much so I didn't realize how long I had been there. And I didn't even think about I had more than enough hours to get the degree that I wanted. And it was in such diverse areas until I could choose. Simply because I wanted to learn. But now, it's not that way. Everybody's trying to get in corporate America so they can make six figures.
Well, they got to pay off the debt from the 4 years of school.
And see, that's what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Put you in debt. Now, you can't afford to take the time to get in the streets like we did in the 60s. Because you got to work. If you get fired, your loan goes into default. And they saw a way to make money off of that. Give the money to the banks, let the banks lend it. The banks lend it to you for a percentage from the government, and you pay the banks back. The government doesn't get the money, but they gave it to the banks to lend.
And one of the things that should have come out of that is the banks should have taken care, as part of being bailed out themselves, taking care of the students,
Right.
who can't
Who can't do it.
do it.
So
They can tie it together.
and that's why I say both of them are wrong. One of the reasons anyway, because it's just enough being done to get elected. It's not real stuff like forgiveness. You can forgive the debt of corporations, but you cannot forgive the debt of students. That's ridiculous.
Which is much, much less.
Much less than what the debts that have been forgiven. And so these are the things. See, sometimes I wish that I had not taken macroeconomics or didn't understand it, because it is frustrating from a human perspective when you understand how easily it is to create the idea of inflation so you can justify raising interest rates. And, I understand how it works, be it on the manufacturing side or on the actual labor side. Manufacturing meaning materials being purchased to use the manufacturing. Or on the labor side, the people who are being paid to do the manufacturing. You can create inflation on either side, anytime you choose. And that's, when you understand how that's done, it's kind of frustrating, but then I have to step back and say, I know who I am, so I'm above all of this. This thing is brought to me. I understand it not because I'm to change something in the world of economics, but I am to see that these things that are set up supposedly to benefit mankind are actually keeping them separate. So we have to rise above that. What I'm saying is this: if you stay stuck on the inflationary aspects of it, then what happens is you begin to follow the symbol of the God of this world, which is money. But if you choose not to do that, then the symbol of the God of this world will follow you. Because it needs you.
And I guess, and I talked to my friends as well, and I said a lot of times, and to me, to keep me from getting so caught up in what's happening, you have to disconnect. You have to know that everything needs to play itself out.
And you have to keep telling yourself that.
Yeah, I have to keep telling myself, because it's so easy to get caught up into what's going on. Like the gas thing, I knew that it would go down eventually, but I got caught up. I'm like, oh, okay, well, you know, something's got to be done. And I said, you know what, I need to come here and we talk about it and put it out there, whatever.
And that's what I'm talking about. We have to, and it has to be sincere.
Yeah.
You have to do it sincere. It's not, well, I want to do it because it's the discussion is because of everyone. Even, because see, it rains on the just and the unjust. And we have to keep that in mind at all times. None of what we do is about us. It is about mankind. And when I say us, I'm talking about the covering, the people that are covered. You know, whether it be in Great Faith in Philadelphia or here, wherever it is. That's, you know, it's beyond all of that. We are just a conduit for, through which light passes. That's what we are. Now think about it this way. Think about it this way. If we are a conduit through which light passes, right? Then it is impossible for us not to be light, because it's passing through you. So if it continues to passing through you, then you're continuously light. You're the enlightenment. You understand what I'm saying? It doesn't matter. But if you allow darkness in terms of confusion or a circumstance that you consider to be bad, if you continue to allow the thoughts of that to pass through you, that's what contaminates you. And when you become contaminated, you become miserable and irritable and resentful, and you present yourself as a victim.
And that's almost like light building up, like dirt building up, or so that the light doesn't really reflect through you.
Right.
All of those contaminants, like the way my car looks right now, my car gas.
Or like that jar of water with the sand in the bottom and you shake it. And that's because whenever we're shaken by circumstances, we have a choice. We can allow it to settle down, or we can keep shaking.
What you call them things? Some globe with it?
Collodium. Oh, talking about those globe with the thing.
Yeah.
It's a slow things, yeah.
Snow globe.
So anyway, that's the reason we are in this earth realm. Any questions or comments? Okay. I'm caught between two things that I want to talk about today. One is, and I was talking to, I mentioned it to Sheldon, and I mentioned it, I think, to Janice, and that is, I understand the concept of marriage and sex. And the other one is, Monday night, I began to teach. And I was talking about Ye the Light of the World. And I was walking and teaching and talking and teaching and on and on. And then I went to John 3:16, not reading, just remembering it, and of course recited the verse and said, that's not talking about Jesus. And I said, oh, okay, what you just do? In my head, right? But I kept talking about what it meant. And the first opportunity I got, I did the research to make sure. And I was absolutely right. And it wasn't something I was doing trying to impress anyone. It's something, you know, if you teach or if you talk to somebody and something just fall out your mouth and you've never heard or seen it before, you're like, oh my God, did I just say that? That's what happened. So what took place, what I did was, I looked at it and I began looking at it, not just John, the 16th verse, but of course you got to look at what leads to that. And the thing that led to that was the Nicodemus, you must be born again, you got to be that kind of thing. And when he asked Jesus, how can these things be? Jesus says unto him, this is 10th verse, Hebrew 10, art thou a master of Israel and knowest these things? Now, this is the thing, church master, church Israel, and then go back to where it, what it says, the word. Now, Israel, what he was saying to Nicodemus is this: you're a teacher of Israel. Israel means, one is those who praise God, or those who rule as God, those who share, all these concepts are there. And if Jesus is saying, he shall be a prince of God, but it comes from the Hebrew, God prevails, or he will rule as God. So he's saying, you're teaching people that they should rule as God. And you don't know this? That's what he's saying. When he said you're teaching Israel, you're teaching this concept of ruling as God. It's not ruling as God rules. Doesn't it say ruling as God? It does not say ruling as God rules. It says rule as God. That's what the concept. That's what he's saying. And you're not familiar with this, with the things I'm talking about. So why would he say that? Because what he's saying, in essence, is how can you be teaching about those who would rule as God and not understand the concept of beginning? That's what he's saying. Then he says, I say to you, I speak what we know. We doesn't come in there until it gets to, I speak what we know. And the we, if he said what we know, who is the we of whom he's speaking? He and the Father, right? Do you see the connection between, by virtue of his name being Jesus, Yeshua, right? By virtue of that in its, John 3:16, that in itself is indicative of who he is connection with the Father. That's how he can say, I and the Father are one. Because it's Yahweh and deliverer. That's what Yeshua means, doesn't it? Yahweh is deliverer. So Yahweh is the Father, which is, and he, the deliverer, that's the connection. Can you see that? By virtue, and every time we say Jesus or Yeshua or think about the concept, from a spiritual perspective, we are recognizing the oneness of the Father and this man called Jesus. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Now, he said, well, that we know, or that we have experienced, that we testify, that we offer evidence of what we have seen, and we receive not our witness. So you don't understand the evidence? You don't, when you say you don't receive our witness, you don't understand the evidence? These scriptures were written in such a way to infringe upon free will. Actually, maybe translate it. Then he says, if I tell you about what exists in the earth, because things is the word that's highlighted, and things talks about earth, so it says earthly things, so things is not there. I tell you about what exists in the earth, and you don't believe me. You see that? You don't have no confidence in what I'm telling you. So what is he saying? What did Jesus tell him?
How can I even show you spiritual things when I tell you things that you can see from your human perspective and you don't even believe it?
So what did he tell him that was earthy? You see where I'm coming from?
Mm-hmm.
What concept exists in the earth realm that he was telling Nicodemus that he did not have confidence in? It was not being born from a woman's womb. He understood that. It's a concept of
the translation between you're more than physical. You are one spiritual with your Creator.
The idea, okay, he says you must be born of the Spirit, right? If he is equating that to being born from the mother's womb, then he's talking about if you're teaching this, you're supposed to understand the birth from beginning. He called that earthly. Earthly, a concept that exists in the earth.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the only thing he talked about that is connected to the earth. Everything else was connected to the spiritual, because he said that the spirit is like the wind. No one knows where it comes from, no one knows where it goes.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes.
That's what he was talking about. And then he says, that's the heavenly part of it. When he talks about the spiritual, no one knows where it comes from, no one knows where it goes.
Uh-huh.
That's the enlightenment, the concept of enlightenment that he's saying, if I talk to you about that, you won't understand that. Because you don't even understand going back to the beginning. Now let me show you how wild that is. Or how detrimental, I should say, that is. To this day, 99% of, 99 and 9/10% of everyone on this earth do not understand born again. That's what he was telling Nicodemus. And the reason is because rather than search for understanding, rather than seek the Creator for understanding, we accept whatever we're told, which is a relinquishing of your free will. If you can convince a person that slavery is okay, you don't need anybody to watch it. They're going to stay there. If you put a chain on an elephant, you train him, he can't move, now you can put a thread on him. And he's not going to break it. As soon as he feels the tug, he'll stop. That's how we have been trained. That's how we have been conditioned. To go, to accept whatever is said. And not ask the question, okay, if born again means the same thing as being saved, then, and he says that it's just like the wind, being born again just like the wind, nobody knows where it comes from, nobody knows where it goes, then my question is, who is like the wind? Because if that's what being born again, that's what he said it means, didn't it?
Yes.
So if that's the case, and salvation and being born again are the same thing, then nobody's saved. Because we don't know, do you do that? If you did that, you wouldn't be talking about gas prices.
Yeah, that's true.
You know? You understand? Does that make sense? So, then he says, no human had ascended to the place of enlightenment or to heaven.
What verse are you on?
It's 13.
Okay.
But he but he that came down from heaven. Now listen to what he says. Who is the he that came down from heaven? The Son of a human, which is in heaven. The light of a human. Because that word man is for human. It doesn't say man, male or female. It's human.
Mm-hmm.
The concept of the human being which came from the light. What is he talking about? Beginning. When the perception of separation came into being, was that not at the beginning of everything as we know it?
Mm-hmm.
That's what he's talking about. It came from enlightenment. It came from the heavenly. And see, by virtue of dealing with heaven like it's a geographical location, did I use that word right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, location. To deal with it as though it's like that means that it's a place that is enclosed somewhere separate, from this place that we call Earth.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at it from the perspective of how the scripture actually deals with it, it's talking about it comes from enlightenment. So the whole thought of being human came from the one who was enlightened. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil is enlightenment, just like the tree of knowledge, the tree of life is enlightenment. Both of them are. So, but that's where the human came from. And he said, just like Moses lifted up the serpent, just like the one who was brought into the earth to separate the ones who were ruled as God from the darkness of Egypt, lifted up or elevated the cunningness in his wilderness, so must the Son of humans be lifted up in the same way. Now, what is he saying? When Moses lifted up that serpent in the wilderness, it was a symbol of Moses raising up, letting them see the cunningness, the craftiness, the confusion, the darkness that they were supposed to be walking out of. If you can see the issue that you need to deal with, you're more apt to deal with it. And when Moses did that, those who did not pay any attention to it, it says that they were bitten by the serpent, didn't it? Mm-hmm. What that means is they were overtaken by darkness. And keep reading, you'll find out they died in the wilderness.
Yeah.
Because they were overcome by darkness. Can you see that?
Yes.
So, those who are overcome by darkness, when this human, the Son of the human, is raised up, then you must recognize that the reason he's being raised up is because they have plotted against him. That those who are confused don't understand why he came, who he is. Can you see that?
Yeah.
They don't understand that because the scripture said if they had known who he was, they would not have crucified him.
Yeah.
So the confusion was there. That's what he was talking about. And the whole concept of the cross talks about to take a stand. So because he took a stand for light and enlightenment, he confused those who were confused, raised him up. And when he was raised up, those who were confused got into a sense of deeper confusion. But those who recognized that he came to enlighten, those are the ones who became his disciples or began to live their lives or to offer the understandings of the scriptures the way that he did. You get that?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Now, I promise you I didn't see all that Monday night. I need to start right there. So, and he says that the reason, now he gives the reason that the man is being lifted up, right? Human is being lifted up. Look at the reason. So that whoever believeth, see that?
Mm-hmm.
In himself. the one who lifted up. Touch that hem, Papa.
Him means herself, himself, themselves, itself.
See?
It.
The same.
The same. So he's saying who the reason I'm lifted up is so that whoever has confidence in themselves will not perish, will not be destroyed, will not go through eternal misery, but they will have eternal life. They will have an understanding of God, of Elohim, and the one who he sent, or have an understanding, rather, of the Father and the one whom he sent. That's what eternal life is. Read it. John 17:3.
Wow.
That's what eternal life is. So the whole idea of this is not talking about Jesus, it's talking about us. Now you can see why I said, what I did, when I had done research. I mean, I was, oh my God. And the killer was that they were taking notes. So I could say, okay. And I'm thinking, you know what?
Couldn't say scratch that, could you?
You got to straighten that out. But when I looked at it, I'm like, oh my God. So this is talking about us. Now, why is it that you have to believe in yourself? In other words, you got to, who is yourself? Not the human. But I say that ye are gods. But you shall die like the prince of men. Is that not what he said? In Psalm 82. Now, why did he do this? He said, because Elohim loved diversity to the extent that Elohim allowed this son of this nature to be crucified, actually, so that whoever believeth in him should not perish. So he's saying that in the beginning it says, believe in himself rather should not perish. Then he says, because Elohim did not send his son into the world, or the human into the world, to condemn the world. You see that?
Yes.
Did not send his son to condemn the world. Because right here, when you look at this, it does not say son of man, but he's still talking about the same thing as he was in the previous scriptures, where he talked about the son of man. He did not say the son of God in those scriptures. He said the son of man, didn't he?
Yeah.
So he's talking about the human into the world, so that not to condemn it, not to talk bad about it, not to bring confusion to it, not to create darkness in it, but that diversity may be delivered from its own ineptness. And guess what? Nicodemus was not an atheist. Nicodemus was not one who said, I don't want anything to do with religious settings. Nicodemus was not one who was ignorant. As a matter of fact, Nicodemus is credited, I think Josephus writes about Nicodemus having designed the aqueduct system for Jerusalem. So brilliant man we're talking about here. We're talking about a teacher of the scriptures. That's who Jesus was talking to. So what's the significance of that? If we can get the people who are seeking after the Creator to see what's here, what's really being said, then we have an opportunity to be a mirror to them, or be the reflected as opposed to the reflection. Can you see that? But we have to have confidence in ourselves. And to have confidence in yourself is to have confidence in who you are. We say that. when the children are growing up, you must believe in yourself. If you believe in yourself, you can do anything. Do we not tell our kids that?
Yeah.
The sky's the limit. You know? In other words, there are no limitations. Sky and heaven is the same thing. They're interchanged in our vernacular. So we are actually talking about these things, but we're doing it from an earthly perspective. And we're looking for earthly ends or goals to be met. Can you see that? But this is talking about something totally different. So what he's saying is, you were not brought into this world to do what? Huh?
To condemn?
You were not brought into this world to condemn it.
And to judge and to damn it and to whatever.
You were not brought here to talk disparagingly about people who you think are saved.
Or say things that separate people
Right.
and
The
do
whole
things
nine
that
yards.
separate people.
And the thing that gets me about it is that the concept of Christianity separates people. And I'm talking about post-Constantine Christianity. Separates people. Through denomination, through race, through economics, through social standards. You see? All kinds of, to male and female, all kinds of things are set in place to perpetuate the concept of separateness. And each of these, guess what? Thank you, dear. Were brought into fruition, brought into being rather, not by those who are the closest to the place of confusion. You know, where man came to perception being separated.
Mm-hmm.
Not that. It came from the God we created. That's where the perpetuation of separateness came from. From the God we created. Look at Israel. Prior to 1948, Christians and Muslims and Seventh-day Adventists and everybody was living next door to each other in peace.
Mm.
And in 1948, Britain, France, and America made sure that that the Jews out of Europe settled in what the land of Palestine, and they changed the name to Israel to make it more palatable to the people who were Christians, when the land was never called Israel until 1948. It was the people that Israel was making, the name Israel was making reference to, those who were with God, or the one who was Prince of God. Though it were the people, not the land. So that in itself helps us to see that every aspect and every denomination, all the dogma of religion came together to decide that this is where these people are going, and what the actual reason for doing it was totally geopolitics. To have a European nation in the middle of the Middle East. That's why it was done. It's geopolitics. And they took religion to justify it. Can you see the picture? Yeah. And ever since 1948, there has been total confusion, total conflict in that area. Total darkness in that area. When the Christians were being persecuted in what is now known as Turkey, it was the Muslims who brought them into their country and protected them. That's who did that. When they were being persecuted, the Muslims protected them.
Mm.
Now, because of geopolitics, look at the separation that is taking place. And we are not here to create separation. We are here to tear down the walls of separation. We are here to not live and let live. We are here to live and teach how to live. You got that? Because to live and let live is that do anything you want to do. No, we are here to live and teach others how to live. And our teaching them how to live is not necessarily sitting down in the classroom. It is through our interaction. So, any questions about that? And I know I said a mouthful.
That's why it strikes such a strident chord when people pick up on things like the 47% versus them.
Yes.
You know, that it's just like a wedge that's driven and perpetuating separation.
And guess what? The separation there is the God of this world. The symbol of the God of this world is money. That's the basis of the separation.
So it is a physical manifestation of a spiritual kind of thing.
Yeah. So, I mean, think about it. People get frantic when they don't have no money. Until they get sick. If somebody tells you you're terminally ill, you don't get frantic about money no more. It doesn't matter what happened. What would happen if we lived like that every day? How different would we be and others around us because of how we are?
It would redistribute the balance of power.
Definitely. Because the balance of power now is about money. But the balance of power in reality is about respecting and enhancing the spiritual awareness of mankind. That's the shift of power. That's where it all is. Any questions about that?
Just to think about it, money in itself is just some artificial concept that's not needed at all for anything or anyone to survive on earth.
Right. I mean, and earlier you want to talk about how you can actually manipulate inflation. That's how it's manipulated.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, if you really want to think about it, the God of this world is money, and America controls all the money in the world. Every bit of it. I don't care what the Chinese say. Think about it this way. If I owe the bank $20,000, the bank owns me. But if I owe the bank $2 billion, I own the bank. Because if I stop paying,
Yeah.
you see what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
If I stop paying, so what do? You run up a $3 trillion debt with China and say, okay, mess with it.
Yeah.
I ain't gonna pay you. Now your money's devalued. You see what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So
Wow.
So like killing the prize witness.
yeah. so you know, it's like, yeah, I owe you. Now what? Keep messing with me, and I'll take a gold coin and imprint it with $3 trillion and call it the currency of the USA and hand it to you and say you pay.
With this one coin.
Yeah. Because it's back with the phrase. See, when we talk about what it's back with, it's back with guns. That's what the dollar's back with, guns. So we have our work cut out for us. Listen, we know this because we talk about, I feel like the weight of the world is on my shoulders. It is.
Tell us.
Yeah.
It feels, it's like
It's heavy.
I'm always tired, and I don't know why. Because we are not coming face to face with the reality of who we are and what our responsibilities are. Our responsibilities are not the vocations from which we draw checks. Our responsibility is to enhance the spiritual awareness of mankind. And if we would step back from the vocations that we have and say, you know what, this is not that serious. It makes a difference. when we talk about unwinding, right? What do? We will go somewhere and sit down and relax and may have a drink to unwind. What do we call unwinding? Disconnecting from our job. So,
Yes.
so what happens? You get balance when you disconnect from that vocation. So if you can live disconnected, you can live in peace while you carry out that vocation. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Huh?
Yeah, I understand that.
And it's difficult too. You know, because see, there is nothing more irritating than to be someplace making every attempt to disconnect from your job, and there's somebody there, all they talk about is their job. Ain't nothing more irritating than that.
Oh.
I mean, I'm serious.
For a lot of people, that's life.
And
That's their social sphere. That's everything to them.
that's why, and that's because they don't see who they are. Think about it this way: when we're socializing, I don't talk about what we gonna do here.
Right.
We didn't talk about everything, you know. There's a whole spectrum of stuff that we talk about. Why? Not because I want to disconnect from who I am, but because I need to step back from what I do because of who I am, so that I can get a clear vision, so when I move the next time, I can go further. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but our weight is not compared to what you carry. So yeah, I understand what you're saying. Because you carry ours, yours, and you carry the world. You do. So.
Now,
Whew.
now watch this.
Mm.
Guess what he said? The one who has confidence in himself is not condemned. But the one who does not have confidence is.
Mm.
Isn't that wild?
Wow.
Why? Because he is not believing in the character of
Mm.
the begotten Son of God, right? Listen, of this unique Son, Elohim, of is not there. Can you see that?
So how does it, if of is not there, how does it read? 'Cause he had
They're
not
condemned because they have not believed in the character
in the character.
or the light, because name is light
Uh-huh.
in the Hebrew. The light of this unique Son, Elohim,
Okay.
because that's Allah.
Why is Son of God in 18 and then Son of Man is in 17?
I'll wait for somebody to ask that.
I still need clarification on Son of Man.
Oh, okay. What you waiting on?
Hmm?
Son of Man is talking about the son of a human, the light of a human. Because son is a builder or a ray of light in the Aramaic. It's talking about the thing that humans built for themselves. And when you become confident in who you are, then you recognize rather, that you are the son of Elohim, or you are a builder or a ray of light from Elohim. The scripture says, for as many as believe on his name, gave he the right to become the sons of God. Does it not say that?
Yeah.
So, that's what Jesus is saying here. If you have confidence in the character or in the light of Elohim, right, then you become that light.
So, the Son of Man that's lifted up, is that like the human light or the human understanding? Is that the obstacle?
Okay.
Because there's
Yeah,
a comparison
right.
there, right?
That's the obstacle.
Okay.
This is reason is the obstacle. When Moses lifted up the serpent, it was representative of confusion, darkness, cunningness, craftiness, all that kind of stuff, right? And that cunning and craftiness spread throughout the world. So when righteousness came, it was the confusion, darkness, and craftiness that lifted it up. So when you look at what was the righteousness and understand that the reason that he came, the reason he was lifted up, then you began, that is when you began to have confidence in yourself. You began searching for him. Why? Because he said, if I be lifted up, I would draw all men unto me, right? Mm-hmm. Now, he also said, not only will you do what I have done. So he's talking to us about this, is he not?
Yes. But the other thing it represents is darkness and confusion put light up on, for lack of a better word, a pedestal. And so it's like, you know, the scripture that talks about you don't hide your light under a bushel. Yeah. They thought they were doing him in, and whenever, but what they did was they put him up there so everybody could see who they were.
Right.
Because you had to make a decision. This, you know, how do I see this Jesus?
That's what I'm talking about. That's what I meant to say. Now, watch. That is true. So, Jesus says, you must be crucified there. Mm-hmm. So, what is he saying? You're in the midst of darkness and confusion. And you're going to be crucified there. They're going to seek to destroy you every day of your life because of who you are. But it helps them to see who they are. When you do the right thing and people continue to do the wrong thing towards you, eventually they begin to see who they are. Or the people around them see who they are. Because we always say, when somebody show you who they are, believe it. We say, you know what, regardless of what happens, I'm going to keep doing the right thing. And eventually, you will see the ones who perpetuate the darkness fades away, which is perish. Or they are taken out of the equation, which is also perish. Can you see the picture?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, wait a minute. Janice, did that help?
A little bit. I'm still confused, but
go ahead. State the confusion.
I'm struggling with the Son of Man is a ray of light and Jesus and all. It's just
the concept of man is what it's talking about. Of the human is what it's talking about. It's talking about when the Adam was put in the trance and chose to buy into the concept of separateness. And as a result of that, it evolved, or devolved, I should say, into a human.
Yes.
So it's a denser form of light, is what it is.
Okay.
And also, you have to understand by them trying to teach this concept that they're not doing how religion would do today, is trying to show you something that you cannot be and is totally separate from you. It is going from where their understanding is to connect them to the higher self, or to connect them to the concept of Jesus, etc. So if I just came and you were some homeless person and I started talking about being a king somewhere, you have no concept of that until I, some type of way, make a connection so that you can see it and understand it. Other than that, you just see yourself as being separate. You see something above you, and there's no way that you can reach that, or no way that that thing is part of you, or you are part of it, etc.
It's the whole concept of the separateness that came from Adam.
That there has to be some type of connection. You speak to people in their own language or from what they actually understand, and then you connect them to whatever concept it is that you're trying to help them to understand or see. So if you had let's say I switch around. Let's say I just had a second grade education and had a second grade knowledge or understanding of reading, etc. And let's say you have your PhD and you come and you speak to me as if you were speaking to colleagues within your field. I'm not going to know what the heck you talking about at all.
But see, that's the idea of being crucified daily. If you shed the light. What she want to know is the differentiation between Son of Man and Son of God, right?
Not exactly. I don't understand verses 13 and 14. And I think I may just have a block or something. I just want you guys to keep going and it'll probably clear itself up.
13 and 14. Okay. Everything is light. You understand that?
Mm-hmm.
As Barbara said, man is what? A denser form of light.
Mm-hmm.
The whole concept of humans came from where?
Man?
The whole- the
Start
whole
with
man.
that, with Adam,
With Adam,
through
to
that
light.
line. Okay.
The whole concept came from light.
Perception.
Yeah, the perception came
Okay.
from light. Right?
Mhm.
Him exercising his free will, it came from light. That's what he's talking about. The human came from light.
Right.
That's what he's saying. But when he gets to, and when he gets to verse 14, when he gets to the portion that's in verse 14, well, then he compares himself to Moses, or he compares the human who came from light to what Moses did, right? Mm-hmm. Now, as Barbara stated earlier, the serpent was lifted up, and that was the confusion, right? That's what Moses lifted up. The thing that was supposed to be drawn out of the ones who would rule as God. And when he was lifted up, it was light that was lifted up, because they stayed with the darkness as opposed to following the light. And because of that, now he says, if you believe in yourself, you will not be scattered, taken away, or you will not perish.
Mm-hmm.
Are you following me, Denise?
I still don't understand if the Son of Man is a good thing or...
It is not a good thing.
Okay, that helps quite a bit.
It's not a good thing. The Son of Man is who we are.
Yeah, that's the condensed light. I mean,
Yes,
that's
the
not
condensed light,
that's
yes.
not where we want to stay.
Right.
Okay.
It's not where we want to stay.
I'm good.
Okay.
I understood the first time and got confused.
Okay.
Sorry. Thank
Okay,
you.
Ms. Audrey.
Okay, I just want some clarification on 18. So, it's saying, he who believes in himself is not condemned, but he who does not believe in himself is condemned, because he hasn't believed in himself as the character of God.
I saw that as the person who is actually doing the judging is the person himself, upon himself. And an example of that would be if you go to work and you're not sure who you are, in a natural way, if you don't, well, not natural way, but in a physical way, if you don't think highly of yourself, you could easily get caught up in small, mindless things. However, if you are aware of who you are and you have confidence in yourself, etc., and you know who you are, you will know that you are above particular situations. So it would be very difficult or impossible for you to get caught up in small meddling and things like that. But ultimately, as far as the judging is concerned, different things that you go through, if you're confident and you know who you are, they don't bother you. So what other people have to say about you, or what they think about you, not in an arrogant or conceited way, but they don't matter to you because you know who you are, you're confident. However, if you have no idea who you are, you're just confused. And because you're confused, that's the only reason why people who say things about you or they do things to you, it bothers you, because in a way you don't really know, you're not 100% sure if they are correct or not. You don't totally believe that they're wrong. If you are 100% sure that somebody is wrong about something, and they just have it wrong in regards to yourself, you really don't care. You couldn't care less.
And substitute, condemn for separate.
Well, I mean,
If you have faith in yourself, you don't believe that you're separated. But if you don't have faith in yourself, you're already separated. Because you have not had, you don't have confidence in the character or the light of the begotten Son of God, not Son of Man. When you have faith, when you have confidence in yourself, you recognize who you are. You recognize yourself as being the Son of God. That's what it's saying. But when you don't have confidence in yourself, you are already separated from God in your mind. Your concept is.
You're lost.
And that's what the church teaches. That you can't get with God till you die and go to heaven. That's not what Jesus is talking about here. And for those who may be just joining, when I say you are the Son of God, the scripture says, if as many as believed, and many had confidence in himself, gave he the power to become the sons of God. And the right is dunamis, the word from which dynamite came, which is explosive, expansive power.
And the reason why you had to do this, and it came out of your mouth before you really understood, is because it's critical that we accept and understand and receive this as we approach December 21st.
Yes, yeah, you're absolutely right. And thought about it from that perspective. Hard to help.
yeah.
I think we need to
I'm
keep
wondering-
talking until it
I'm
does
wondering about,
saturate and
Right.
permeate.
I guess I'm wondering about all these people who do believe in themselves.
See-
But their motives aren't right.
That's it. But
they still believe in themselves.
yes,
To a certain
they don't
extent.
believe who they are.
But it's like
They
the
believe
human
in
wisdom
themselves
kind
as
of.
humans.
Yeah.
They have not. They don't believe the light of the that comes to them. The enlightenment. They believe in themselves. Nimrod believed in himself, and he believed himself to be powerful enough to do anything that he wanted to do, and he was able to draw people to him as their leader. He was the first one to have people come to him in a reverent way in terms of worship. And and what happened? The father said what? We must do what? Confuse their language, their understanding. Why? Because humans can do anything that they set their mind to do. Your motive can be totally wrong, and you can accomplish your set goal.
If I can believe it, I can achieve it.
That's it.
Conceive it, believe it, and
But
achieve
are
it.
they not condemned then?
Yes, they are. Because believing who this is talking about believing that you are Elohim.
Yeah.
That's what that's talking about.
And
When we went going through school, we were told believe in yourself, and you can accomplish anything. The whole world is yours.
So
if
we
you
said the
believe in
sky
yourself.
is the limit.
Yeah, that's it.
Which,
When you believe in yourself, and that's an earthly term
yeah.
that we use, but it's actually a spiritual truth when you see what it really means. Yeah.
yeah, the thing that automatically changes is if the person believes in themselves, but believes in themselves of who they actually are, but not who they actually think they are, then they wouldn't need to be greedy because they will understand that all provisions and everything will automatically be provided.
This is
So
what he's saying.
it's in that if someone just believes they can do something, but they don't understand who they are, then they're not that person that we're talking about here that's not being judged.
Or have the right purpose for doing it.
Yeah.
This is not who we're talking about. Every single thing that we do must be for the perpetuation of mankind becoming aware of himself, of who he really is. Everything we do, everything in this earth is set up for that purpose and that purpose alone. The whole
Go keep going.
The whole concept of marriage, of sex, of birth, all of it is set up so mankind can understand who he is. Jesus uses the results, Nicodemus comes to Jesus about the results of physical sex when he said, how can I enter my mother's womb? That's a result of physical intercourse, isn't it? Jesus didn't tell him there was no such thing as intercourse in the other realm. If there is intercourse that brings life in this realm, it has to have a heavenly meaning.
Yeah.
Because as above, so is below. Okay? You want to ask before I continue, because you know where I'm going.
Well, it wasn't a question. Never mind. Go ahead.
What I'm saying is that we haven't a clue as to what marriage is all about. We haven't a clue as to what marriage is all about. Boy, I took the top on guys. Marriage did not begin in the garden in terms of the Adam and the woman being brought. It began in the garden in terms of the light, the feminine energy surrounding the masculine energy. Can you see that?
Yes.
Say that again. So it's not in terms of the atom, which we usually think of as that physical entity, anyway.
Right.
And the woman, that physical entity.
Right. And please keep me, on track in terms of what I'm saying, because I sometimes talk faster than think faster than I talk. When you look at that light, if you will allow me for a moment to put it in earthly terms, so you can understand a heavenly truth. When you look at that surrounding, right, we talk about who we surround ourselves with, do we not? Mm-hmm. Now, if you surround yourself with someone, you're in the middle of it, right? Mm-hmm. So, if the feminine energy surrounds the masculine energy, then if you can see that circle and see a ball in the middle or dot in the middle of that circle, what you see is the masculine inside of the womb. Before birth can take place, the way it's, there is intercourse, is it not? And the male organ is surrounded by the female organ. Can you see that?
Yes.
And as a result of that, life comes. That's the same principle that was involved when he said, make him a helpmeet, and it means to surround.
So the very act of intercourse in the physical then, like with the serpent on the pole, you said it represented that spiritual truth of going back to beginning.
Yes, exactly.
Every time.
Every single. That is the reason. If your motives are right and your desires are right, when you do that, whatever you have desired begins. You create it. Every time you do that, you create something. You're either creating the idea of earthly lustfulness, or you are bringing into being the whole concept of beginning. Now, that was perverted. And the perversion of it, well, let me back up. Traditional marriage is not a man and a woman when it comes to the history of marriage. The history of marriage, the tradition of the history of marriage is a man and several wives. That's the tradition of it. Now,
In which culture?
every culture except this one, pretty much all of them, except the European culture. But most of them, if you look at the history of marriage, that's what you will see. Am I condoning? No, I'm not. because it has a significance to it. The significance to it is not the more wives you have, the more wealthy you are, or the more powerful you are. That's not it. It was perverted. And what happened is, rather than it being what it was supposed to be and having the correct result, it became a pleasure for men and the opportunity to dominate females and keep them in their place. Got it?
Yes.
That's what it resulted in. Now, if we look at it from beginning, what we will see is that it is no coincidence, even though I have always misunderstood this, it is no coincidence that there are more females in church than males. That's no coincidence. That is indicative of what took place in the beginning, surrounded by feminine energy.
Yeah.
Now, these wives are a perversion of being surrounded by by feminine energy. Yes, you must have in the earth realm a female with whom you engage intimately in order to bring from the other realm. But simply because you're surrounded by feminine energy or female doesn't mean you engage with all of them. What happens is you have spiritual intimacy with them, but the physical intimacy is what keeps you balanced and keep them balanced and keep us creating the space that's necessary for the light to come to fruition, or for man to be infused with a desire to recognize who he really is.
Bet you can't say that again. And the reason I ask that is because, I'm so busy on this other thing here that I'm...
Okay. Every female that surrounds a male, he is not to engage physically with. He engaged spiritually. But there is a female who he does engage intimately with physically, because what it's doing is bringing the spiritual into the realm, and it comes as a conduit, like a aperture opening between the two worlds. Because what happens is the recognition of what's going on is that those two people become as the Adam was before he perceived himself to be separate. Can you see that?
Yes.
Does that make sense? That's what happened. So, what has taken place is the men are surrounded by women in terms of the physical energy, right? And I'm talking about the church settings now. And what happens, rather than seeking to understand the reason, we make up a reason and we buy into it. They dare call men only, men worse than women, or some, all kinds of crazy stuff. But they use the women to raise the money.
So you pimp them.
Yeah. They use the women
Pimping to the God of this world.
Yeah.
to do all the things they don't want to do. That's what they're doing.
Yeah.
And they're having spiritual intimacy, and as a result of that, they are bringing others into the earth who are doing the idea, the concept, permeates the atmosphere so others grow up doing the same thing. So, in order to change that, so that we can have the space to do what we're doing now, if you look at it, young people are not going to church.
They don't.
You see what I'm talking about? But I was talking to my daughter, my oldest daughter, and we were discussing some things, and one of the things that she said was, when she had been criticized about going to church, and she said, yes, well, we're talking about her being raised in church and not going. She said, my daddy gave me God, And I choose not to sit in a place of confusion. I choose to seek God on my own. And some of the concepts that she talked about are the same things that we deal with. And one of which is the mind matrix, the macro mind. So what's happening is that this is being infused into the earth and is being picked up, being absorbed, without that wall, having to go through that wall of religious piety. Okay? Now, this is what I'm saying to you. That is the reason you do not find a ceremony for marriage in the scriptures. And now I understand the reason I have to write the vows that I'd use at every wedding, because I do it to fit the couple. Who they are, what their aspirations are, that's what they do. Now, when Jacob working for Rebecca, right? That's who he was working for. He worked 7 years for her, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Rachel. I'm losing my help.
Isaac.
Yeah, that's right. He worked for Rachel, right? I'm going to back up to Isaac in a minute. Worked for Rachel. But how did he get married to Leah? He slept with her. They had physical intercourse. They brought the worlds together. See what I'm talking about?
Yes. Did they trick him?
Yes, they tricked him. But he still was married to her.
Oh.
It couldn't be like, well, you know what? This is not who I work for. I'm sorry about that. And Leah, it was bad. But you got to go. He didn't do that. You see what I'm talking about? He accepted it.
Yeah.
Because he understood the concept. Now I'll back up to Isaac and Rebecca in a minute. Go ahead, Bob.
Hold a second.
Okay.
You said Jacob married
I'm scared.
Leah, and they did it. I'm not gonna scare you now.
Okay.
You let stuff come out of your mouth, so you know by sleeping with me. And the thing you said that caught my attention was they brought the worlds together.
Right.
Now Leah was this? Yeah, this was after Jacob had. That's after Jacob's name had been changed. Okay, so Leah represented that the physical realm, Jacob the spiritual, and when you said it, they brought the worlds together, that's what I thought about.
Right. Now, what she represented, see what happened, I would say Rachel represented the physical. Because he wanted Rachel for her beauty.
Oh, yeah.
And Leah gave birth to most of the kids.
But when you said worlds together, that's what I'm clicking on. Okay.
It brought the worlds together. Now, that reminds me of a vision I had a long time ago, and I shared it, when this man and this woman were standing in this room, and both of them were light, and they intertwined with each other, and it ended up being intimate, and there was light that not only went up but came down, and the whole place was filled with light, and things began to change. That's the gist of it. That's the same principle that I'm talking about. But I talk about Rebecca, I think it's your question.
So Leah had internal beauty, the beauty that we're really made of, and Rachel was the outer.
Leah had balance.
Which is the beauty.
Not internal beauty.
Okay,
balance.
which is the beauty that, okay.
And Rachel.
But when we talked about Leah before and Rachel did have the external beauty, but Leah was comely. She was comely, Comely, meaning nothing particular on the outside to make someone want her compared to her sister.
Right.
So in a sense, there was something internal going on.
That's why her dad took and said, "You ain't about to marry you.
Yeah.
I got to get you out of here.
Yeah.
Well, I got to change."
Yeah.
That's what happened. Is that not what happened?
Yeah.
Well, you want us to agree with you? Yeah.
So anyway,
He's wrong for that too.
but that's what he did.
That's what I'm saying. He was wrong for
Yeah,
that.
wrong.
Oh, but wait a minute. The motive was maybe not the right one, but what happened was for the greater good
Yeah.
Yeah.
because of it.
The thing that he meant for his bad.
Right.
Tricking that man.
So, when we look at Rebecca and Isaac, what we see is Isaac being connected to the feminine energy that his mama is familiar with. Because he went to Sarah's folk. You remember?
Mm-hmm.
She sent him to her folk. So what does that mean? She understood, either in the spirit or natural, I don't know which, maybe both. She understood it was necessary for him to be one with the energy from whence she had come, so that from the womb would come those who would rule as God, which was Israel. Can you see that?
Yeah.
So what happened is actually started there and began to spread exponentially. So that's the understanding of it. But again, we have perverted, whether it be polygamy or whether it be individuals, one man, one woman, we have perverted both of them. And the worst perversion of all is that men who marry treat women like they own them. That can't be. The idea of it, see, if I show deference, or if I grant opportunity for females around me to be who they are, do what they need to do, that kind of thing. If I do that to them, with them, and the one that I am intimate with for the purposes of bringing both worlds together, if I don't do that with that one, then all my doing with the others is in vain. Did that make sense?
Oh, yes.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
All of it is in vain. So what happens is when the two worlds come together, it is also because of my desire. What it's doing, it is bringing not only two worlds together, but it is also giving me an opportunity to birth some things that I did not know were in me, or that I'm made from. So there is not only a pregnancy in terms of the feminine being pregnant, but it is also a pregnancy of the feminine energy in me becoming pregnant, and the masculine revealing it. Can you see that?
Yeah.
So the whole idea to surround is who you're surrounded by. And we say that. If you surround yourself with bad people, you're going to be bad. Don't we say that?
Yeah.
So if you surround yourself with lustful people, you're going to be lustful. Right? If you surround yourself with the understanding of what feminine energy is, then your attitude begins to change.
Little leaven leavens the whole lump. But you know what? Last time you taught this, our attitudes were bad. Well, not bad, but we couldn't understand what you were saying.
Our attitudes were evolving and changing.
Dress the monkey up, but okay. And you're
looks
right.
better.
Yeah, it does look better. But we couldn't accept it. But now it's much different, and I don't know why.
Well, one reason it is because shortly after that, when we were sitting in a teacher conclave, we said, you know what, that understanding of definition of explanation of adultery, only a woman, that's wrong.
Yeah.
And we kept moving.
Okay.
Because that's what changed it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because we began to see the reality of it is that Israel was called an adulterous nation. You see?
Right.
because they intermingled with other gods, not because of the other physical stuff. You see?
Yeah.
Now, the Israel was called a nation. I talked about geopolitics in Israel earlier. A nation is not a landmass. A nation is the people. You understand what I'm saying? It's not a landmass.
Okay.
It's the people. So when the reference is made to the nation of Israel, it's talking about people who were ruled of God, like as God. That's what it's talking about. Any questions about that? Do you understand that?
So then,
Well, I got way over there from New Testament to the Old. Okay, go ahead, Bob.
Israel was an adulterous nation because they were people who ruled as God, and yet ruling as God, they had intercourse with other gods rather than the one God. We have intercourse, when we have intercourse with anything that's, I lost it. I didn't lose it, it's just out there. I'm thinking about this concept of adultery. We commit adultery in so many different ways.
There you go.
When we follow that which is, when we follow our own God rather than the truth. The God we create rather than the God who created us.
Yes.
I guess.
That makes sense.
So anytime we follow the God we created, whether it be economics, whether it be whatever it is, whether it's gender related, whatever.
And economics is the carrot on the stick.
So
Is
To
what?
keep you- the carrot on the stick.
Okay.
That's the economic. To keep you running after it.
Okay.
Are there any other questions or comments? Because I want to show you something else that's going to bring out even clearer, Audrey. The question you raised earlier about understanding 19 says, this is the separation. Enlightenment has come into the world, and humans love darkness or confusion rather than enlightenment because their works were unright or evil. You see that? That's verse 19.
Wow. Yeah.
That's right. It did not say, and this is the condemnation, that Jesus came into the world. You see that? It didn't say that, did it?
right.
Now, there are those who would say, it's not making reference to you, it's making reference to Jesus, right?
Mm-hmm.
But to them, I will say this. It says, light has come into the world. And Jesus says, I say that you are the light of the world. So it has to be talking about us. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That's the clarity of it. So light has come. And humans, that's human beings, that's anthropos in the Greek. They love the darkness or the unrightness, confusion, more than they did the light. And he said, and he gave the reason. Because they were evil. Because they were unrighteous. They were hurtful, degenerative, all kinds of things involved in unrightness.
Something that goes right along with all, every time we see judgment and we see separateness, those two are interchangeable. They're used as a krino for judge, and for judgment is krinos. But every single time when you talk about, for example, and of course I'm looking at it from the Young's Literal Translation in 18, he who believes in him he who believes in himself is not separated. He who does not, he who does not believe in himself is separated already. And then going forth in the 19, this is the separateness that light has come into the world, and men love the darkness. We're talking about the judgment is the separateness that actually that did the darkness part.
And that's self-judgment, because you made the decision not to follow the light, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, and every time you don't know who you are, because if you know who you are, you know you're not separated. So that in itself is that judgment that is interchangeable. But automatically, if you know who you are, then you know you're part of the whole, and you're not something separate or different, etc.
This is one of the things I told him Monday night was, when you are in the presence of people who are discussing what's in the book, and you know that they're wrong, and you know that you need to speak up, because there's sometimes you just need to be quiet. But when you need to speak, you know when, and you refuse to do that, then that is when you are rejecting Jesus. That's when you're rejecting life. By virtue of you not saying anything, when you know you should. Now, the reason we are able to influence events and circumstances, no matter where they are, is because, in no uncertain terms, we accept who we are. And we know that everything is connected. Everything is one. That's why we're able to do that.
Same thing as lifting your leg up, and you think your body is all of your body parts are connected and not separate from one another. It's the same exact concept.
Right. Because when you move your leg, it affects your body. You don't believe it hurt. The whole body responds to it. Even though you're not thinking about the rest of it. When you lift it up, it still responds. So that is what I saw in terms of John 3:16, and the other verses that I spoke of, I saw them just not sitting here. So, any questions? That's it. Are we done? I suppose that we are now.
That's a lot. I took 6 pages of notes and I still didn't get it all. That was a lot.
What you didn't get right?
I'm just saying, there are things you can't get, the
Right.
nuances and the.
Yeah.
Amen.
Okay. We're done. That's Denise. Papa?
Okay. Light is truth, and truth is light. Light and truth are one. We are truth and we are light. We are one.